Okay, if you know anything about what I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to start off by saying I disagree with the general consensus of what I'm hearing about this film. The Electric State is a good film. Now, is it a great film? I don't know. I would have to watch it again and then go like, wow, that was really good and I'm glad I watched it again. At this point, it's too new and I don't really have time to watch it, but here's the thing. I'm very certain I will. I liked this movie. And I don't know why I'm hearing so many people who do things like this, that is TikToks, and basically talk about how much of a waste of their time and how much of a waste of money The Electric State was. Now, just to give a little bit of credence to this, The Electric State is a film that cost about $320 million to make. That's more than, say, Titanic or maybe Avatar, I don't really know. Yeah, here's the thing I have with this. This is a Netflix film, and I had to admit, wow, I don't know why Netflix has really upped their game here to produce one of the most expensive films of all time, and something that really should have been put in theaters. Because this feels like a major studio release, and yet it's just sort of like a Netflix movie of the week that shows up on Friday and you watch it before the weekend's over. And not only is this a huge big budget production, it has very big names in it, like Chris Pratt, Stanley Tucci, Millie Bobby Brown, that guy who was in Mandalorian and played Gus in Breaking Bad. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe that that this film has just got such a bad reputation. Now, is it a perfect movie? Oh no, it's not. Does it have scenes on it that I think drag on and that shouldn't have been done? Yeah, I will have to admit, there are some scenes that don't really work here in this film. On the whole, and maybe it's me, but I'm kind of a sucker for a spectacle type film like this. Even though this is a film that I think has plot threads and things that have been done before and probably done better in other films, I still support this film. I like the style of this film, and I like the look of it, and the effects are obviously where the $300 million or $300 or so million went to. Now, let's get into this. The Electric State is based on not a graphic novel, but I think a graphic book. That is a book that had some very detailed pictures in it, so from what I'm told. So, yeah. Think Dinotopia, but with robots. At least that's what I believe has happened. I have no idea if it follows the basic premise of the book. It probably didn't. Let's just say it didn't. There's so many things that happen in this film that I went like, okay, that... You know when you're watching a movie that's based on a book and you just get to a point and you go like, yeah, that didn't happen in the book. And you kind of feel that? Yeah, that happened to me several times in The Electric State. Electric State sort of takes place in an alternate reality. And by alternate reality, I mean one in which robots have been around since, like very functioning robots have been around since, I don't know, maybe the 1950s. In this film, they actually showed Walt Disney himself working with one of these robots. And I went like, what the heck? Did you get permission from Disney to do that? I kind of felt like, why isn't this a Disney film? Again, I don't know. And I kind of feel like maybe this is one of those productions that starts out with one studio and then changes hands because of something. I don't know. You get that a lot. And Lord of the Rings was once a Disney project. Yeah, it was. Once it was done by Miramax. Look it up. Anyway, so basically, sometime around this alternate history, in the 1990s, there was a robot uprising. The robots got sick of doing people's work, tired of being treated by slaves, and at this point in time, I almost want to say yada, 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 because I feel like we have seen this kind of plot line before. In this case, there was a war that lasted quite a few years, and they don't really talk about the human casualties of this war very much, but essentially the robots wanted rights. Now, at some point in time, this one company, this big mega corporation known as Center, figured out the technology to essentially basically make an interface between people and robots. So as a result, they could create a whole bunch of troops that could essentially take down the robots, because that was obviously something that, you know, if you send out humans against robots, it's kind of even no matter how big their guns are, the robots are going to have that advantage there. So now that the humans had the advantage, there was a peace treaty. So all the robots sort of agreed to live in this one, basically, section of the desert that they had kind of already taken over at that time. And I think they just kind of built a wall around them and stuff like that. Now, I don't know how the humans could have done that. They certainly did that very fast. This film actually starts out in 1994, a film that I remember, or a year that I remember, that we didn't have hardly any of the technology that they have. So there are a lot of people who live in these virtual pod things that they have on their head, because I remember in 1994, people were talking about virtual reality like it was going to be the next big thing. It never really was, and it still never is. But in this world, apparently they perfected it really well. So there are a lot of people that just kind of, you know, they just kind of have their virtual pods, and they kind of, maybe they live their life with their, you know, their robots kind of do all the really heavy lifting and stuff like that. And that's kind of an interesting concept. So the main character of this thing, who's played by Millie Bobby Brown, she has like a brother who she lost in a car accident, and then one day this robot shows up, and it's dressed like a robot from a popular cartoon, and it utters lines that a robot on this cartoon would do, and it's a lot like Bumblebee. And I feel like this movie is stealing a lot from the movie Transformers, especially with the robot designs and looks. So she realizes that somehow her brother's mind is in this robot, and she's got to get it back to her brother's body, and they think they can kind of track it down. It's a little awkward how this happens. I kind of felt like, okay, that's kind of interesting. You have to get your brother's mind back into his body, which means her brother is still alive. Now, her brother was a genius, and I'm going to get into heavy spoilers on this thing, but so she eventually takes this robot, and while on the road, she meets Chris Pratt, who's a veteran of the robot wars, and one who realized that the robot wars were kind of dumb. And he has like a little robot companion named Max, who's really interesting, actually. Kind of a funny robot character. I kind of like that. I mean, this is why you do these things. You always have these funny robot side characters. Basically, The Electric State is funny robot side characters, the movie. So when they go and they go to this abandoned shopping mall, which is located in the robot demilitarized zone or whatever, and yeah, and that's when they realize that they have to find out where her brother is, and it turns out he's in Seattle because, this is where I get into spoilers, the guy that started Centers, played by Stanley Tucci, basically used this kid's mind to create the interface of the robots. This is a hard plot point to swallow, and I have to admit, it does feel kind of weak there. What isn't weak is the spectacle of this film. By the time you get to the end of this film, there are robots fighting these kind of humans sort of thing. And here's the thing that I like about this film. The robots here, they aren't just copy-paste of each other. These robots have very individual personalities, and we actually got to see them earlier, so that by the time we see them fight in the battle, it becomes something. And I like the way that this film has done this. And now granted, the human beings that fight, they're essentially just copy-paste like robot drones who come in and fight them. So yeah, it's basically kind of like the colorful characters versus the non-colorful characters. Is it good? I think so. I thought there was a lot of excitement here. There are a few things at the end of this film that I kind of thought almost... There's one scene in particular with... remember how I said that Chris Pratt is a robot buddy named Max? Well, we see him get killed in battle, but then it turns out he opens his little head up, and he's got a little Max living there. And here's the thing. At first I thought, oh no, they're using the cheat death card, but I thought, actually that makes sense, because we've actually seen Max basically go into larger robot bodies, and so yeah, it just kind of made sense that there was actually a robot body in there. So is there even a smaller robot body inside that Max? I don't know. Still, I thought it was pretty well done. There's a bit of a sequel bait to this thing that I don't think will ever happen, that the robot that the kid's body was in might still be alive, but I'm kind of going like, nah, I don't really want to see that. I think you should watch The Electric State. Just see it. and decide whether it's bad